Welcome. Today is Monday, November 17th, 2025. I'm Tyvoar, and here's what's happening today in Star Citizen. Star Citizen is making headlines today as the project inches closer to $900 million in total crowdfunding. Multiple gaming outlets are reporting the current total at approximately $885 million, marking yet another milestone for what has become the most lucrative crowdfunded project in gaming history. 5 major gaming outlets published coverage today, and it's worth breaking down what each one is saying because each brings a different perspective to the story. GamingBolt leads with the raw numbers, $880,435,950 and counting. They note that the $1 billion mark is now within sight, which would be an unprecedented achievement for a crowdfunded project. Their coverage emphasizes the technical progress, particularly highlighting the Alpha 4.0, released earlier this year with server meshing technology, which allows different game areas to run across separate servers while keeping boundaries invisible to players. They quote Chris Roberts, stating that 2025's primary focus is improving playability, including performance, stability, and content. Twisted Voxel takes a more analytical approach, noting that the community is sharply split between loyal backers, celebrating technical achievements, and critics calling the project vaporware. They provide helpful historical context on the funding progression: $300 million by mid-2020, $400 million by late 2021, $500 million by September 22, and over $800 million in 2024 and 2025. That's an acceleration of roughly $100 million per year recently. The piece discusses the ongoing debate about whether continuous ship sales are actually delaying the conventional launch, which is a conversation that's been happening in the community for years. International Business Times UK emphasizes the historical significance, noting that funding has vastly exceeded the original $65 million final stretch goal. They point out that despite players being happy so far with alpha access, full release still seems far off. It's a measured take that acknowledges both the achievement and the ongoing questions. The Gamer focuses on broader gaming industry context, comparing Star Citizen's budget to major AAA blockbusters and noting how it has surpassed most traditional development budgets in pure crowdfunding alone, not even counting any additional private investments or revenue from ship sales post-pledge. And finally, Insider Gaming puts the emphasis squarely on the timeline. They report the funding at $885,286,273 as of October 2025, and remind readers that the game has been playable since 2017. That's 8 years of alpha testing. Their observation is in funding shows no signs of slowing down as the team continues adding content rather than planning a 1.0 launch. Speaks to the fundamental tension in how this game has been developed. So let's put this into perspective. When Star Citizen launched its crowdfunding campaign back in 2012, the initial goal was much more modest. The original final stretch goal was $65 million. We're now looking at more than 13 times that amount, and it's not just scope creep. That's a fundamental transformation of what the project has become, and the game has been playable since 2017, which means we're approaching a decade of alpha access. For context, that's longer than many released MMOs stay active and in development, and yet funding shows no sign of slowing down. The question that keeps coming up in every one of these articles is, what does this mean for the actual release? Are we looking at a game that will perpetually exist in alpha, continually funded by ship sales and new content, or is there actually a finish line in sight? We'll talk more about that timeline in a bit, but now looking at official channels, there were no new announcements from CIG today. I checked the comm link, the development tracker, the status page, and all the usual places. Radio silence, and honestly that makes sense given what's coming up this week. But let's talk about what we do have, which is Alpha 4.4, released to all testers on November 11th. Just 6 days ago, this is a significant patch that players are still digging into, and it's worth recapping what it brought to the table. First and foremost, we got the Nyx system. This is Star Citizen's third system after Stanton and Pyro. For those keeping track of the grand vision, the original pitch included over 100 star systems. We're at 3, but Nyx is notable because it includes Levski Landing Zone, which is a fan favorite location returning from earlier builds. It's a mining station built into an asteroid, and it's got that gritty industrial aesthetic feel that a lot of players love, and the patch also introduced the Vanduul enemies to the Persistent Universe. These are the primary antagonists in Squadron 42 campaign, and seeing them in the MMO portion of the game is a big deal for lore reasons. We're finally seeing the pieces to the single-player story start to bleed into the multiplayer experience. And then there's interstellar hauling missions. This is huge for the cargo gameplay loop. You can now take freight from one star system to another, which opens up economic gameplay in ways that weren't possible when they were limited to just Stanton and Pyro. It's the beginning of what could become a proper trading economy spanning multiple systems. The community response to 4.4 has been generally positive, though there are the usual technical difficulties you'd expect from an alpha build. Server stability has been a mixed bag, and there are reports of cargo occasionally disappearing during quantum travel, which is not ideal when you're hauling millions of credits worth of goods. But here's what everyone's really waiting for. The Intergalactic Aerospace Expo 2955 kicks off this Wednesday, November 20th, and it runs through December 3rd. If you're a new citizen, think of IAE as the game's version of E3 mixed with a car show. It's the biggest event of the year, and it's when Cloud Imperium Games pulls out all the stops. Let's break down what's happening because there's a lot to cover here. First, the free fly period starting November 20th. Anyone, and I mean anyone, you don't need to own the game, can download Star Citizen and play for 2 weeks. You'll have access to over 150 ships and vehicles. That's everything from small single-seat fighters to massive capital ships. New players get 50,000 aUEC as starting credits, which is enough to rent additional ships or buy some gear and generally get a feel for what the game offers. If you've been curious about Star Citizen but haven't wanted to commit money to an alpha, this is your window. Download it, try it, see what all the fuss is about. Now, for existing players and potential new backers, IAE is also the biggest ship sale of the year. Ship purchases during IAE come with 120-month insurance. That's 10 years of in-game insurance coverage. Typically, you get 6 months or maybe 120 months. If you buy during specific promotions, IAE is when you get the maximum coverage. Here's what we know is happening for sure though. The F8C Lightning will be available for general purchase without the gold license requirement. For those who don't know, the F8C Lightning is the civilian version of the UEE Navy's premier heavy fighter. It's been one of the most requested ships for general availability, and previously you could only get it if you had concierge level account or completed Squadron 42, or you got one of those golden tickets when it was available. Now it's open to everyone. The big ship announcement is the RSI Perseus. This is a gunboat and a smaller capital ship designed for anti-large ship combat. It's been in concept for a while, and the expectation is that it'll be available during and with the expo. Now, here's how IAE works. Manufacturers rotate showcases in 48-hour periods, so you'll have Aegis Dynamics for 2 days, then it switches to Vanduul Aerospace, then Origin Jump Works, and so on. During each manufacturer's showcase, all of their ships are available to rent the game for free or to purchase with real money. There are also daily login badges. If you log in each day, you collect the badge. If you get all of them, you get a special commemorative item. The event culminates with Best in Show ships on November 29th. These are ships that the community voted on as their favorites, and they get special Best in Show skins that are only available during this window. And here's something brand new. Cloud Imperium Games is introducing their first ever Twitch drops featuring exclusive armor and cosmetics. If you watch Star Citizen streams on Twitch during the event, you can earn exclusive in-game items. This is the first time they've done Twitch integration like this, and it's clearly an attempt to drive visibility and get more eyes on the game during its biggest event. For the hardcore players, there's also stock limited ships. These are the rare, expensive ships that sell out quickly. We're talking about limited quantity capital ships and special variants. They tend to release in waves, and you have to be fast if you want one. It creates a bit of a frenzy, and honestly, it's part of the spectacle of IAE. In-game, there will be an actual expo hall at the new Babbage location on Microtech. You can walk around, look at ships on display, and get into them even and test them out. It's a virtual convention center, and CIG puts a lot of work into making it feel like a real aerospace expo. So what's the community doing now? Well, current monthly player count sits at around 64,000. And that's daily as of November 16th, which is down around 35% from the prior month. But before anyone panics, this is completely normal and expected. We're in a lull between a major patch and a major event. Alpha 4.4 has also been out for less than a week, so the initial surge of players checking out the new content has started to taper off. And with IAE just 3 days away, a lot of players are taking a break, catching up on other games, waiting for the free fly to start so they can play with friends who don't own the game yet. This is a predictable pattern. IAE is when those numbers are going to absolutely explode. Last year, we saw player counts more than triple during the free fly period. And with the size of this year's event, 2 full weeks, over 150 ships, Twitch drops for the first time, I wouldn't be surprised if we see even bigger numbers. On Reddit, the Star Citizen community is relatively quiet today. There's the usual mix of screenshots, new player questions, and debates about game mechanics. Nothing particularly controversial or newsworthy. The mega threads are focused on Alpha 4.4, bug reports, and IAE preparation. People theory crafting which ships they're going to buy, discussing the F8C Lightning, availability, that sort of thing. Spectrum, the official forums, shows a similar vibe. Lots of technical discussions about 4.4, optimization, people sharing their hauling routes between Stanton and Nix, and anticipation building for Wednesday's event launch. The content creator space is gearing up too. Major Star Citizen YouTubers are preparing their IAE coverage, ship reviews, buying guides, best ships for new players, that kind of content. We're going to see a flood of videos starting Wednesday as everyone rushes out to cover the new ships and guide new players through the free fly experience. One interesting note, the sentiment around the 900 million funding news is generally split down the middle in the community spaces. You've got one camp saying this proves people believe in the project and want to support it, and another camp saying this proves the project is a money printer with no incentive to actually release. Both sides have passionate arguments, and honestly both sides have valid points. It's the eternal Star Citizen debate, and today's news has reignited it in full force. Now let's talk about the timeline, because this is the question everyone wants answered. When is this thing actually going to release? Squadron 42, the single-player campaign, targets 2026 release date. This is the game's single-player story mode featuring big-name actors like Mark Hamill, Gary Oldman, Gillian Anderson, and others. It's been in development alongside Star Citizen, and it's been feature complete since 2023, currently in what CIG calls the polish phase. If Squadron 42 actually ships in 2026, that would be significant. It would be the first complete release product from this entire project. It would prove that CIG can actually finish something and put it in a box with a 1.0 label on it. And frankly, a lot of skeptics are waiting to see if it happens before they'll believe the Star Citizen itself will ever truly launch. As for Star Citizen, the multiplayer persistent universe, Chris Roberts indicated in August that the full 1.0 release is estimated for 2027 or 2028. That's 2 or 3 years from now, and I need to be honest with you, the project has consistently missed previous target windows throughout its development. The original pitch back in 2012 suggested 2014 release date, then it was 2016, then those dates stopped being specific and became when it's ready. So when Chris Roberts says 2027 or 2028, should we believe it? The optimistic view is that server meshing is now implemented, which was the major technical hurdle. With that solved, the team can focus on content and polish rather than fundamental engine work. Alpha 4.0 and 4.4 showed that the core technology is starting to mature, maybe just because we're finally in the home stretch. The pessimistic view is that we've heard this before. The goalposts keep moving. Every time one major technical challenge is solved, another emerges, and with funding continuing to pour in nearly $900 million now, there's no financial pressure to actually lock down a release date and stop expanding the scope. The realistic view is probably somewhere in between. We're likely looking at 2027-2029 window for Star Citizen 1.0, assuming no major setbacks. Squadron 42 will probably come first, potentially in 26 as stated, and its release will tell us a lot about whether CIG can actually meet their deadlines. What does 1.0 even mean for Star Citizen? Well, that's another interesting question. The game is already playable, people are already having fun in it. When they slap a 1.0 label on it, what changes? Presumably, it means all the core systems are in place and a full economy and planned professions, a stable server infrastructure, and enough content to justify calling it complete. But CIG's been careful not to define exactly what 1.0 means, which is both smart from a PR perspective and frustrating from a backer perspective. So let's recap today because there's a lot to process. Star Citizen's crowdfunding total is approaching $900 million, with 5 major gaming outlets running stories today. The coverage ranges from celebration of technical achievements to questioning whether this project will ever truly launch. The community remains divided, passionate supporters on one side, frustrated skeptics on the other, and a whole lot of people in the middle just waiting to see what happens. Official channels are quiet today, which makes sense with IAE just 3 days away. Alpha 4.4 is still fresh, giving players the Nix system, Levski, and interstellar hauling to explore. And then we have the big event, IAE 2955, starts Wednesday 1600 UTC, 2 weeks of free fly over 150 new ships. The F8C Lightning going on general sale, first ever Twitch drops. This is Cloud Imperium Games, the biggest event of the year, and they're clearly pulling out all the stops. For new players watching this, Wednesday is your chance to see what Star Citizen is all about without spending a dime. Download it, try it, explore 3 star systems, fly ships ranging from a tiny 1-seater to massive capital ships, see if it's a project you want to support. For existing backers, Wednesday is when you're going to see your servers flood with new players. Help them out, answer their questions, show them the ropes. Every positive first impression matters, especially when the gaming media is watching and waiting to see how this event performs. And for everyone watching this project from the outside, the $900 million question is still unanswered. Will Star Citizen ever truly release? Will Squadron 42 ship in 2026? Will the persistent universe reach 1.0 by 2028? We don't know, but we're going to keep watching, keep reporting, and keep bringing you the news as it happens. Mark your calendars, Wednesday, November 20th, 1600 UTC. That's when the Intergalactic Aerospace Expo 2955 begins, and that's where we're going to see just how much this project has grown. That's all for today, guys. I'll see you tomorrow with whatever the verse brings us, and I suspect tomorrow is going to be a lot more focused on IAE preparation and less on funding controversies. But hey, that's Star Citizen for you. Always something to talk about. Fly safe out there, citizens.